Hey everyone, creator of the channel here. Before we begin, I want you to forget everything you know about standard story formulas. Today, I'm not just going to tell you a story. I'm going to dissect a psychological masterpiece, a mental chess match so meticulously staged, all wrapped up in an opening sequence designed to pin you to your seat. Picture this. You're in a massive auditorium in Seattle. The air is thick with anticipation and the smell of money and ambition. The stage lights are blinding, focused on a single man on the dais. That's Leo Vance, the genius CEO of a tech empire, an icon of success. He's wearing a perfectly tailored suit, a $1 million smile, and his deep, confident voice fills the auditorium, mesmerizing the thousands in attendance and the millions watching online. He's on top of the world, giving a speech about the future, about connection, about a better world powered by his own technology. Every word he says is met with thunderous applause. And then, everything changes. Just for a moment, a tiny ripple on an ocean of perfection. The giant LED screen behind Leo glitches, just for a split second. A dry, stray click echoes from the sound system, a sound no one on the tech crew can explain. Leo frowns slightly but quickly regains his composure. He's a professional. A minor technical issue isn't going to throw him off. But it wasn't an issue. It was an attack. When Leo opens his mouth to continue, the voice that comes out of the hundreds of speakers in the auditorium isn't his. It's a woman's voice. Calm, ice cold, and clear down to every syllable. "Hello, Leo," the voice says, cutting through the crowd's stunned silence. "You speak so eloquently about trust and a connected future. So why don't you tell everyone here about an encrypted file buried deep in your private server, the file named the Clara Protocol?" Leo's $1 million smile freezes on his face. The mask of confidence shatters in an instant. His pupils contract, and for a millisecond, before he can hide it, the world sees it. Raw panic. On the giant screen, his company's logo vanishes, replaced by an encryption interface counting down from 60 seconds. Below it, the cold, hard text, "Control has been transferred." That moment, my friends, is the climax of the story I want to tell you today. This isn't just a revenge story. This is a detailed analysis of how one person, backed into a corner, stripped of everything, used her oppressor's own technology to stage the most spectacular and public takedown possible. How did someone deemed psychologically unstable outmaneuver a top-tier cybersecurity team? How did she gather evidence right under the nose of a pathological controller? And what exactly is the Clara Protocol? In this video, we're going to rewind the clock, go deep into every move, every play in this game of life and death. Stay until the end because this isn't just an inspiring story. It's a priceless lesson in power, courage, and how to turn your prison into the ultimate weapon. To understand that seismic moment, the moment a multi-billion-dollar tech empire teetered on the brink of collapse because of a single voice and a countdown clock, we have to go back. Not 3 years, not 3 weeks, but 3 months, to a typical Tuesday morning in Seattle. The sky was gray, spitting rain, a signature color that had become part of the city's soul. But inside the penthouse apartment overlooking Puget Sound, the world was entirely different. The space was defined by glass, steel, and a near-perfect silence. Through the floor-to-ceiling walls of glass, the entire city of Seattle was a living painting, glittering in the rain. The furniture was minimalist, expensive, with not a speck of dust, not a single item out of place. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like an art gallery, a perfect installation, and just as cold. The silence was broken only by the faint hum of electronics, of a system that was always listening, always on. In that gleaming kitchen, Clara stood alone, waiting for the coffee machine to finish its job. She wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater, her hair in a neat bun. She looked like everything else in this home, elegant, expensive, and somewhat distant. As she reached up to tuck away a stray strand of hair, the cashmere sleeve of her sweater slid down unconsciously, just a little, revealing a bruise, fading to a yellow-green. It was a small island of violence in an ocean of perfection. She quickly pulled the sleeve back down, a practiced, reflexive motion. The bedroom door opened, and Leo Vance walked in. His hair was styled, his robe was silk, and he wore the smile of a man accustomed to getting everything he wanted. He approached her, wrapped an arm around her waist, and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. A perfect gesture, a perfect image for any accidental observer. "Morning, love," he said, his voice deep and full of concern. The virtual assistant said you didn't sleep well last night. Your heart rate was a little high. Clara just gave a faint smile, not meeting his eyes. I guess I just had some trouble sleeping. But in her head, the words were screaming. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a reminder that nothing in her life was private, not even the beating of her heart while she slept. The smart home system, the one Leo proudly showed off to investors as the pinnacle of convenience, was, in reality, an invisible jailer. It tracked her sleep, her body temperature, every time she tossed and turned in the night. Leo smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Let me turn up the heat a little. You seem cold. He didn't even have to touch anything. He just spoke, and the house obeyed. This house listened to him, not her. That control seeped into every corner. A few days ago, he had given her a stunning diamond necklace. She had been surprised until he said casually, I saw you looking at it on the Tiffany website a few times. I knew you'd love it. The simple joy of wanting something for herself had been extinguished. There were no secrets, no private spaces, not even in her own thoughts and quiet desires. When she drove to an art gallery in the old part of town, the car reported the entire route back to him. He would ask, in that same tone of feigned concern, was the gallery fun today? And Clara knew the question really meant, I know where you were. She wasn't living in a home. She was living inside an operating system. And Leo was the system administrator, the one who held every password, every access key. The bruise on her wrist was just the physical manifestation of a much crueler truth. Every second of her life was being monitored, analyzed, and controlled. She was a bird in the most beautiful gilded cage. And the problem was, the whole world could only see the gold, not the bars. It was in that suffocating, cold silence that a plan began to form. A plan not just to escape, but to reclaim administrative rights to her own life. The realization didn't come like a storm, but like a cold fog slowly rolling in. It didn't make her scream. It made her terrifyingly silent. She began to watch, to analyze, and to wait. She knew she couldn't break this cage from the inside with brute force. She needed a key, or failing that, she needed someone who could teach her how to pick the lock. But before seeking outside help, she had one last sliver of hope, a test her heart had to perform, even if her mind already knew the answer. The chance came during a weekend dinner when her parents, the Harrisons, came to visit. This was a ritual, part of the performance of a happy family they all put on together. The penthouse was immaculately clean, dinner was catered from a 5-star restaurant, and the fine wine was poured. Outside, the rain continued to fall against the glass walls, and the city at night looked like a man-made galaxy. Clara had planned this moment meticulously. She chose a sea blue silk dress, the kind with sleeves that only reached her elbows. The bruise on her wrist, now a deep purple, looked like an ink blot on a perfect canvas. She didn't have to flaunt it. She just had to exist. The meal unfolded in a polite but distant atmosphere. Her father, a once successful man whose eyes now always held a hint of worry, talked about business. Her mother chattered about their friends. Leo, as usual, was the perfect host, charming and generous. He poured wine for his father-in-law, served food to his mother-in-law, and occasionally glanced at Clara with a look that an outsider would mistake for affection. But Clara knew it was the look of a jailer checking on his prisoner. And then she made her move. During a lull in the conversation, Clara reached across the table for the water pitcher. A natural gesture. The silk sleeve of her dress slid down with the movement. Under the warm, yellow light of the dining room, the bruise was in plain sight. Silence fell over the table. It only lasted 3 seconds, but in those 3 seconds, time stood still. Her mother's breath caught. Her eyes, which had been wandering, were now fixed on the bruise on her daughter's arm. Clara could see it all in them. A flash of alarm, a flicker of pain, and then, just as quickly, fear. She glanced hurriedly at her husband, as if looking for direction. Her father's expression didn't change. He placed his fork and knife down on his plate with a slow, deliberate motion, creating a soft but sharp clink that cut through the heavy silence. His eyes didn't look at the bruise. He looked directly at Clara, his gaze empty, impassive. It was the look of a CEO evaluating a risky investment. Leo said nothing. He just let out a faint smirk, an almost imperceptible smile of triumph. This play was even better than he had hoped. No one asked, "What happened to your arm?" Not a soul. Her father was the one who broke the silence. "Leo," he said, his voice as even as if nothing had happened. "Should we meet with the new suppliers next week? I think we need to optimize the supply chain." And just like that, the moment was over. Clara's bruise, along with her last shred of hope, was buried under talk of business, of social engagements, of anything and everything except the truth sitting right there on the table. The evening ended. As Leo was seeing them out, her father stopped, turning to Clara as she stood alone in the foyer. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture that seemed warm but felt like ice. "Clara," he said quietly, his voice laced with meaning. "I know life isn't always easy, but you have to understand, your stability is the family's survival right now. Leo has helped us a great deal. Don't do anything reckless." Clara didn't answer, she just nodded, her face a blank mask. But inside, something had shattered completely. It wasn't advice, it was a sentence. They had seen her wound, and not only had they looked away, they had told her to keep bleeding in silence to protect their own interests. She had looked for an ally in her own blood and found only her husband's business partners. That night, after her parents had left and Leo was in his study, Clara stood alone in the dark, looking out at the glittering Seattle skyline. Her solitude had never been so absolute. The last ember of hope had been extinguished. There was only one truth left. She was alone. And if she was going to survive, she had to find a different kind of ally. Someone unbound by money or family ties. Someone who understood that in this world, sometimes the only way to fight a tech monster is to become a ghost in his own machine. She pulled out her phone, opened an encrypted messaging app, and typed a single name: Maya. The message was sent, but no immediate reply came. That was part of the protocol. In Maya's world, silence and patience were the first layers of armor. Clara waited. She didn't go to sleep. She sat in the darkness of the living room, watching the numbers on the digital clock dance silently, and for the first time in a long time, the silence of the surrounding devices didn't feel suffocating. It felt tense with anticipation. 24 hours later, a single message appeared on the encrypted app's screen. Seattle Public Library, Special Archives, 3 p.m. Bring a hardcover book. The location was not random. The library's special archives were a labyrinth of towering bookshelves, a public place that offered enough privacy, where whispers would be swallowed by the smell of old paper and book glue. It was a domain of quiet and knowledge, a perfect contrast to the loud, deceptive world of tech in which Clara was trapped. At 3 p.m. sharp, Clara walked in. She found Maya sitting at a secluded table in the corner, her back to the wall, a clear view of the entire room. Maya looked unremarkable. Jeans, a simple t-shirt, and a heavy-looking backpack at her feet. But her eyes were different. They were sharp, constantly scanning, analyzing angles and exits. They were the eyes of someone who lived in a world she never fully trusted. Maya didn't say hello. The first thing she said when Clara sat down was, "You used public Wi-Fi to message me, right?" Clara nodded. "A coffee shop 3 blocks away." "Good," Maya said, her voice low but clear. "Never use your home network, not for the most innocent thing. Assume your entire house is one giant mousetrap and you're living in it." Clara took a deep breath, placed the hardcover book on the table, and told her everything. She spoke of the feeling of being watched, of the words of concern that were actually surveillance, of Leo's absolute control. Maya listened without interrupting. Her eyes showed no sympathy, but the intense focus of a doctor diagnosing a complex illness. When Clara finished, Maya nodded slowly. "What you're feeling," Maya began, "isn't paranoia. It's worse than you think. He didn't just install some simple tracking software on your phone. What he's using is a type of kernel-level spyware. It digs deep into the operating system. It's not an app, it's become part of the phone itself. Everything you type, every site you visit, every call, it logs it and sends it to his server in real time." Maya continued, her voice steady, but every word landed like a hammer blow. "Your home Wi-Fi system isn't just providing internet. It's sniffing every data packet going in and out. He knows exactly what you're watching on Netflix, what you're listening to on Spotify, your smartwatch, the sensors in your bed. They aren't just tracking your health. They're collecting your biometric data to create a psychological profile. His AI can probably predict your emotional cycles based on your heart rate and sleep quality. A chill ran down Clara's spine. So, what do I do? For the first time, Maya smiled. A sharp, cutting smile. He built the perfect digital prison around you, but he made one fatal mistake. What mistake? He thinks you're the prisoner. He never suspected you're also the architect. You understand that house, how it works, his habits, better than anyone. He thinks he's controlling you, but he's given you something priceless: information. And I, Maya said, opening her heavy backpack, am here to give you the toolkit to tear it down from the inside. She placed a few items on the table. First, a simple-looking phone with no logo. A clean phone. The OS is custom-built by me, untraceable. Only use it to contact me. Next was a small USB drive that looked like a cheap piece of jewelry. This isn't for storage. Inside is a digital forensics toolkit. Plug it into his computer when you get a chance. It will automatically copy the most critical files without leaving a trace. And finally, Maya pushed a small notebook and a pen toward Clara. High-tech is great, but nothing is safer than low-tech. Your most important thoughts, your core plans, write them here. No system can hack paper and ink. Clara looked at the items on the table. The despair that had tormented her for months began to dissolve, replaced by a new feeling. It wasn't vague hope. It was a cold spark, hard as steel. She was no longer a victim waiting for help. She was a soldier being armed. "Thank you, Maya." "Don't thank me," Maya replied, packing her things. "Make him pay. Our plan starts now. Step 1, collect everything. Turn his control into evidence against him. Turn your prison into your armory." Maya stood up and slung the backpack on. "Now, let's start forging the sword." The meeting with Maya didn't erase Clara's fear. It reshaped it. The fear was no longer a formless fog that paralyzed her. It was now compressed into a cold core of energy, an engine driving her forward with a terrifying focus. The penthouse was no longer a prison. It had become a battlefield. Every corner, every device, every one of Leo's habits became a point on the tactical map she was silently drawing. She started with the most low-tech tools Maya had given her: the notebook and pen. In the weeks that followed, Clara turned herself into an anthropologist studying a single organism, Leo Vance. She documented everything: the time he woke up, the time he went to sleep, the passwords he used for his phone, his computer, his bank accounts. Strings of characters she glimpsed as he typed them carelessly. The names of the company's internal servers he sometimes mentioned during online meetings. His catchphrases, the specific terms he used to manipulate and belittle her. The small notebook quickly filled with priceless intelligence, a detailed psychological and behavioral blueprint of the enemy. The next step was more dangerous. It was time to record evidence. Maya had given her a micro recorder, disguised as a metallic hair clip. One evening, Leo came home after a terrible day at the office. A major deal had fallen through, and he took his anger out on Clara. He didn't hit her this time. He used words, vicious, demeaning words that tore her self-worth to shreds. "Who the hell do you think you are without me?" he snarled, pacing the living room. "You're just an expensive decoration, an investment that, frankly, is starting to look like a loss. You're useless, Clara. Completely useless." On the outside, Clara did what she always did. She bowed her head, took the blame in silence, her shoulders shaking convincingly. But inside, she was someone else. Her right hand, hidden in the pocket of her robe, was clenched around the metallic hair clip. The record button had been pressed long ago. The cold, hard feel of the device in her palm was an anchor of truth, keeping her from being swept away by the storm of humiliation. She wasn't just enduring, she was collecting. The climax of this silent campaign came on a Thursday night. Leo had an emergency online board meeting with investors in Europe that lasted until 2 a.m. He was locked in his study, completely focused. This was the chance Clara had been waiting for. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but her hands were strangely steady. She walked barefoot across the cold, hardwood floor, moving like a ghost through her own home. She approached Leo's main office, where his central computer was located. She gently plugged the jewelry-like USB drive from Maya into a hidden port on the back of the machine. A tiny LED on the drive began to blink steadily, a digital heartbeat siphoning Leo's darkest secrets. Every blink was a second of risk. She could hear Leo's voice rising in the study next door. The meeting was ending. 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute. The moment she heard the mouse click that signaled the end of the call, she gently pulled out the USB, slipped it into her pocket, and disappeared back into her bedroom, just seconds before Leo opened his door. She couldn't sleep that night, not from fear, but from a thrilling sense of power coursing through her. It was the first time she felt she wasn't just defending anymore. She was attacking. The next day, at a different library in a different neighborhood, Clara sent the encrypted data to Maya. Hours later, an encrypted message came back. "It's a treasure trove, Clara. Suspicious financial transactions, audio logs from the virtual assistant he thought he deleted, 2 sets of company books. This guy isn't just an abuser, he's a criminal." Another message followed. "I'm going to use blockchain technology to timestamp every one of these files. As of this moment, they are irrefutable evidence. No one on earth can say you faked them." Clara stared at the message. She was no longer an architect who had given up her career. She was no longer an abused wife. She had become the keeper of the truth, a person with the power to destroy an empire. The sword had been forged, sharp and lethal, created from tears, pain, and cutting-edge technology. Now it was time to wait for the moment to strike. Maya's plan was clear. Before the public assault, they had to cut off his retreat and weaken his resources. Following an encrypted instruction, Clara made her first and boldest move. Using the access information she had gathered, she executed a wire transfer. It wasn't Leo's money. It was the inheritance from her grandfather, a fund Leo had deftly merged into their joint investment accounts under his management years ago. Clara transferred the entire amount to a secure offshore account set up by Maya. It wasn't an act of theft. It was an act of reclaiming sovereignty. Leo's system, designed to track Clara's every dime, immediately flagged the unusually large transaction. That evening, as Clara was calmly reading in the living room, Leo walked in. His usual calm exterior was gone, replaced by a tension that was pulled taut like a wire. But he didn't scream. Master manipulators never start with anger. They start with toxic concern. "Clara, my love," he began, sitting across from her, his voice deceptively soft. "You're not well, are you? I saw you made a very impulsive financial decision. Do you have any idea what you're doing?" Clara closed her book, placing it on the table. "I know exactly what I'm doing," she replied, her voice unwavering. It was the first time she had used that firm, declarative tone. Leo frowned. "Listen, I know you're under stress, but this isn't like you. It's reckless. I'm worried you're self-destructing. Perhaps we need to talk to the family lawyer, find a way to get you some help to protect you from yourself." The threat was laid bare, sharp as a razor. He would use the law to prove she was mentally ill, incompetent, to strip her of everything. But Clara had anticipated this move. She didn't argue. She just looked him straight in the eye and said one simple sentence. "Leo, why don't you try checking your access?" Leo smirked, about to deliver some cutting remark, but then he saw her eyes, a cold, powerful gaze he had never seen before. He picked up his phone, swiped a few times, and then the color drained from his face. At the same moment, Clara spoke into her clean phone. "Maya, execute." Instantly, a chain of events was set in motion. The lights in the penthouse flickered and died. The smart speaker system in every room went silent. The massive TV screen went black. The air was suddenly suffocating in the darkness and silence. "Lights on!" Leo roared his familiar command. Nothing happened. "Play music!" Still, only silence answered. In the darkness, there was a single source of light. Clara had turned on her phone's flashlight, casting a soft glow on her face. She looked at Leo, who was standing, stunned, in the middle of his own dark kingdom. "This house doesn't listen to you anymore," Clara said, her voice echoing in the silence. "Now it listens to me." The rage finally broke through Leo's facade. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he hissed, lunging toward her. Clara didn't flinch. She just held up her phone and pressed play. A voice filled the quiet space, clear and cruel. It was Leo's own voice. "You're useless, Clara. Completely useless." Leo froze, stunned as if by an invisible blow. Hearing his own words, cold and stripped of the context of his anger, was like looking into a mirror reflecting the ugliest part of his soul. He knew he had lost this battle here, but Leo Vance never accepted defeat. He immediately pivoted to a different battlefield hack, one where he had more weapons. He pulled out his phone, his eyes blazing with hatred. He made 2 calls right in front of Clara, his voice rushed and ruthless. "David, it's me. Initiate the crisis protocol. Target, Clara Vance. I want every paper, every blog, every social media account talking about her psychological instability. All resources, now." He hung up, dialing a second number. "Get the legal team ready. We'll sue her for every last penny." He had mobilized an army of lawyers and PR specialists in 30 seconds. He was declaring war, a war to destroy her reputation. But Clara was no longer there to listen. She had quietly turned, picked up a duffel bag that had been packed for some time, and walked out the door. Leo was left alone, standing in the smart home that had betrayed its master, screaming into his phone to command his invisible army. As the private elevator doors were about to close, Clara looked at Leo one last time and said, just loud enough for him to hear, "You can mobilize your army, Leo, but I have something you don't." She paused for a beat, letting her words sink in. The truth. Clara didn't go back to the penthouse. She vanished. With Maya's help, she checked into a small hotel under a fake name, hidden among the quiet side streets of Seattle. The room was simple, even dated, a stark contrast to the gilded cage she had just escaped. But here, she could breathe. Privacy, even in a cramped space, was a luxury she hadn't had in a very long time. But Leo didn't let her be. He didn't need to know where she was to attack. His army, as promised, was mobilized with terrifying speed and efficiency. In just 12 hours, the war had erupted on all digital fronts. The first articles appeared on news sites and tech blogs. The headlines were cleverly written to evoke sympathy. Tech genius Leo Vance faces personal crisis. Close friends worry for Clara Vance's erratic state. The content inside quoted sources close to the couple, painting a picture of a jealous, paranoid wife who was acting erratically after leaving her architectural career behind. Next came social media. A hashtag Support Leo began trending, pushed by thousands of bot accounts. Under Leo's posts, comments were systematically seeded, describing Clara as a gold digger, greedy, and psychologically unstable. Old photos of her were dug up, her smiles at events analyzed as fake, her gaze interpreted as empty. Leo's PR machine wasn't just attacking Clara's actions, it was attempting to assassinate her character. In the small hotel room, Clara sat in front of a laptop, watching the world she knew get twisted out of shape. A pang of pain and helplessness shot through her chest. She had prepared for retaliation, but watching lies be believed by the world was still a powerful blow. Maya, sitting beside her, placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is a professionally orchestrated campaign, Clara," she said, her voice calm. "They're trying to shape the narrative before you can speak. They want to paint you as crazy before you get a chance to tell the truth. This is a textbook move. Don't let it get to you." Clara took a deep breath and nodded. Maya was right. Anger or grief was useless now. This was a chess game, and her opponent had made his move. It was her turn to respond. "A press release won't work," Clara said, her voice regaining its firmness. "His team will bury it in a few hours. We need a weapon that can cut through the noise." "I know exactly who that is," Maya replied, her eyes lighting up. Half an hour later, an email was sent from an encrypted address. The recipient, Serena Jones, host of the famous investigative podcast Unfiltered Truth. The subject line was short and provocative. "The Emerald City Silence, proof of CEO Leo Vance's dark side." The body of the email was even more direct. "Ms. Jones, I have irrefutable proof of domestic abuse, psychological manipulation, and financial fraud committed by Leo Vance. Audio files, bank transactions, videos, and testimony. All of it has been authenticated with blockchain technology to ensure its integrity. He is scheduled to give a major keynote on trust and responsibility at the Global Tech Summit in 72 hours. Are you interested in the truth before he lies to the world?" The response came faster than they expected. Just 15 minutes later, a reply popped up. No greeting, no questions, just a link to an encrypted video conference room and a time, 10 p.m. tonight. The call took place with 3 women in 3 different locations. Clara and Maya in the hotel room, and Serena Jones in a home recording studio, her face on the laptop screen. She was a woman with sharp eyes and an attitude that had no time for pleasantries. Serena didn't ask how Clara was feeling. She asked, What's your proof? Show me your most compelling piece. Maya shared her screen, opening a validated audio file. Leo's venomous voice filled the air. Serena listened, her face impassive. Then Maya displayed the financial statements, the shady transactions. Serena's eyes narrowed. She was a veteran journalist. She recognized the scent of a major story, one that could create a seismic event. His PR team is strong, Serena said after reviewing the evidence. Just dropping a podcast won't be enough. They'll find a way to bury it, call it a personal attack. We need to do something that can't be ignored, something that happens in real time. She paused, looking directly at Clara through the screen. We're not just going to tell your story. We're going to show it to the world, at the very moment he is at his most vulnerable and arrogant. What do you mean? Clara asked. Serena smiled, the smile of a shark that smells blood in the water. I mean, we're going to hit him on his own stage. The plan was formed. Maya would be responsible for the technical side, finding a way to infiltrate the conference's presentation system. Serena would have a special podcast episode ready for immediate release, and Clara would be the voice, the heart of the attack. 72 hours. That's all the time they had to prepare for the digital coup that would rock the tech world. The clock had started ticking. Those 72 hours passed not in fear, but in a state of intense, almost meditative focus. The small hotel room had transformed into a miniature command center. Maya, with 2 laptops and countless secondary screens, became a conductor of a digital orchestra. Lines of code streamed down her monitors, her eyes never leaving them, her fingers flying across the keyboards with lethal precision. She wasn't just hacking, she was mapping the conference's entire network, finding a 0-day vulnerability in a third-party vendor's software. A backdoor no one suspected. Serena, from her studio, became the story's architect. She edited hours of recordings, selecting Leo's cruelest words, Clara's most desperate moments, and wove them into a powerful narrative tapestry. She didn't just want the truth to be heard, she wanted it to be felt, to be seared into the mind of every listener. The Emerald City Silence podcast was ready, like a torpedo waiting to be launched, and Clara was the heart of the operation. She sat in the room, recording the final pieces of narration for the podcast. Her voice was no longer the trembling whisper from a closet. It was now steady, calm, and full of weight. Every word she spoke was a brick building a fortress of truth. She was no longer telling a victim story. She was narrating the fall of a tyrant, as the one who had lit the fuse. And then, the day came. The day of the Global Tech Summit. The auditorium was packed. The stage lights were brilliant. Leo Vance walked out, and the room erupted in applause. His PR campaign had been a resounding success. In the public's eye, he was a genius enduring a personal tragedy, a strong man weathering a storm. He smiled, waved, and began his keynote speech on trust and responsibility in the digital age. In the hotel room, the 3 women held their breath, watching the live stream. System is compromised. I'm in, Maya whispered, her eyes glued to a screen of green text. Podcast is uploaded to all platforms standing by, Serena reported from her studio. Clara was just silent, looking at the face of the man on the screen who had once been her entire world. 5 minutes, Maya said. Leo was talking about the importance of transparency. 1 minute. Leo was talking about how technology must serve humanity. 10 seconds. Get ready. As Leo reached the crescendo of his speech, a smug smile on his face, ready for the next round of applause, Maya typed one final command and hit enter. We're in, she whispered. On stage, something went wrong. The giant LED screen behind Leo glitched. The audio from his microphone cut out abruptly. The crowd began to murmur. Leo looked flustered, tapping the mic. And then Clara's voice filled the room, not from Leo's mic, but from the entire auditorium sound system. Her voice was clear, strong, and cold as steel. Hello, Leo. You talk about trust. So let's talk about the file named the Clara Protocol. Leo's face went white. On the giant screen, instead of the company logo, was an image of him, but not as a CEO. It was a screenshot of a bank statement with damning transactions circled in red. It was followed by a giant audio waveform with the caption, "You're useless, Clara." Then came a close-up photo of the bruise on Clara's wrist. The evidence appeared in a relentless audiovisual assault, giving no one time to think. And as the countdown on the screen hit 0, thousands of phones in the auditorium vibrated in unison. A notification from Serena's podcast app appeared. Special episode: The Emerald City Silence, the truth behind Leo Vance. Leo's entire world collapsed in real time. The audience looked from the stage screen to their phone screens, then back at the man frozen on the podium, a statue of failure. Board members scrambled from the front row. Journalists began filing their stories. And on the stock market ticker, his company's shares began a freefall. The coup was a complete success. 6 months later, the stage was different this time. No flashy LED lights, no technological spectacle. Just a simple wooden stage, a red circular rug, and a woman standing in it. Clara. She wasn't there as a victim or an avenger. She was here at a TED Talk as a survivor and an activist. She looked directly at the audience, at the cameras, and began her talk. "They say silence is golden," she said, her voice warm and steady. "But I'm here to tell you that in the digital age, silence is a security vulnerability. When someone tries to control your narrative, the only way to reclaim your power is to write a different one backed by undeniable truth. For years, I lived in a prison built of lies and reinforced by technology. But that same technology, when used correctly, became my key. Evidence today isn't just a bruise you can cover with makeup. It's code, it's metadata, it's the digital footprint you leave behind. Documentation is the new form of self-defense. Your data, your story, that is your power. Learn to control it before someone else uses it to control you." She paused, looking across the room. "My fight may be over, but the fight for so many others is not." Educate yourselves on digital privacy. Support the organizations fighting against tech-enabled abuse. And most importantly, she emphasized, if you hear a whisper in the dark, whether from a friend or a stranger, believe them. Your belief might be the only weapon they have. When she finished, the entire room stood up. The applause was thunderous, not the adoration for a celebrity, but the respect and empathy for a courageous human being. Under the lights, Clara smiled. It wasn't a smile of triumph, but a smile of peace. She had walked through the darkness, and now she hadn't just found the light for herself. She had become a torch, lighting the way for others.